So something that everybody knows about by now is the thing with Electronic Arts being bought out for $55 billion. And I don't know, it's something that a lot of people are not too surprised by considering how bad the company's been doing over the past several years. The buyout involved the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, and Silver Lake and Infinity Partners. And yeah, there's a lot of people who saw this coming because the company was, I want to say it was like in like 1.9 or over 1.9 billion dollars in debt. That was something that was reported earlier in the spring, and they had cut about 5% of their workforce in 2024. Not to mention just about every game that EA has published, like within the past couple of years since the decade started, has basically been a massive flop, or people just haven't cared about it at all. Examples being Battlefield 2042. That game came out back in 2021, and initially it was a big deal, and then like the player count slowly started to drop dramatically, and you look at two of the latest games that came out. You had Dragon Age: The Veilguard, and I believe there was another major game that came out, but yeah, that game was a massive flop as well, and I believe like EA had lost somewhere around the ballpark of like $6 million in market value because that game was just something that no one cared about. And the thing is, the latest Dragon Age game came out in 2024. That was a very, it was a very average year for gaming in general, and honestly, that game could have stood out that year, but it didn't. I think the other game that EA had released was a sports game. It was EA Sports 25, and pretty much, EA had to they had to like come out with something or a different name because they had um, they had lost their licensing for the FIFA name and the FIFA series. I believe like the licensing agreement ended back in 2022, and honestly, like that was a big deal because FIFA was like one of the main things that was keeping EA relevant and alive. And I don't know, it just like them losing um, the FIFA series is something that really hit them hard. And without FIFA, I mean, what's there to really care about? Because I know they own like the Madden NFL IP, but no one really cares about that. People haven't cared too much about football games since the 2000s. And it's crazy to think that, we've regressed with sports games. It seemed like sports games were a lot better back in the 2000s, early teens than they are right now. And I don't know. I feel like that's just the state of gaming in general. It's like the graphics, even though like you get better graphics, they feel lifeless and hollow. And there's nothing about a lot of modern day games that really stand out for the most part. And I don't know. I mean, EA is not the only major company that's been suffering financially. Like a lot of different companies have been suffering financially from poor sales, losing millions of dollars, seeing their market value drop. Um, you look at games like not games, you look at companies like Activision, Square Enix, Warner Brothers Games. It seemed like it's all across the board with gaming companies. It seems like a lot of their games have been flopping for the most part. I feel like, Sony and Nintendo are among the few gaming entities that are doing really well with their games and all that stuff. And you also have a couple of indie developers that they put out good games and they've had way more success than people expected. But yeah, I believe EA is supposed to be officially going private in 2027 because that's when the transaction's expected to close, and it's expected to close like during the first quarter of EA's fiscal year, and I'm not even sure when that is. But yeah, I mean, like this is something that doesn't surprise a lot of people because there were people who thought that Electronic Arts was going to file for bankruptcy, and and there are people who knew that, maybe a buyout would probably happen. We just didn't know from who, but now we know. And it's something that has been dominating like various headlines across various websites. It was all over social media, it was all over Reddit. Um, it's something that took the gaming world by storm because it was such a big deal, and a lot of people are going on record and saying that this is the end for EA and that they're finished. And honestly, I feel like EA's been finished for a while now. They've been washed for quite some time, and I don't know. I don't think that them going private is necessarily going to make things any better, but I do feel like it's one of those things where we're definitely gonna get a different EA, and there are people who are wondering how this is going to affect the landscape of gaming. I don't think it's gonna have a significant effect on the landscape of gaming because honestly, what has EA done that's significant as of late? What game have they released recently that anyone really cares about, you know? I mean, I know we're supposed to be getting Battlefield 6 in the near future, but I don't know. Aside from that, I mean, you know, what does EA have going for them? Because no one cares about the Dragon Age series anymore. Nobody really cares about Mass Effect. The Sim series has been dead for quite some time, and Apex Legends is kind of old. That game came out back in 2019. Um, I believe we got like a Dead Space game back in 2023, and that was like one of the last things that EA was involved with that people really cared about. So there's not really too many high profile IPs that EA has that people still care about. I feel like the IPs that they own for the most part are just, I feel like they've reached their respective peaks, and I feel like now it's just like, they're trying to make as much money as they can off of them. I don't think we're ever going to get a Titanfall 3, because Titanfall 2 came out back in 2016. And even if we do get a Titanfall 3 later down the line, I feel like it's going to be one of those deals that where nobody really cares at all for the most part. But, it is what it is. Um, Nobody was really expecting. This to be such a big thing. We weren't expecting a buyout of this magnitude because 55 billion is a ton of money. It's like, I don't know, it's like god tier type money, and it's just like, that being the case, it's just like, well, what company is next? Because back in 2022, we saw Microsoft buy out Activision Blizzard, and I feel like it's just going to be one of those things where tech giants and different entities are going to start buying out failing gaming companies because that seems to be a trend. And I don't know, I mean, I don't know, you never know what company is going to be next and what long-term effect it could have on the gaming industry. um I don't think EA being bought out is going to um have a significant effect on the gaming industry, um, like Microsoft buying out Activision Blizzard, because Activision has a lot of IPs that are still like culturally relevant within the gaming world. Call of Duty being one of them, but I don't know. You look at Call of Duty Black Ops 7, like, I don't know. A lot of people are more excited for Battlefield 6 than they are Black Ops 7. That's really saying something. And I don't know, maybe it's one of those deals where, we get a Call of Duty game like almost every year, and maybe oversaturation has harmed the franchise in the long run. But I don't know. Battlefield, for the most part, a lot of people thought the series was pretty much dying after the last major installment that we got. But the trailer for Battlefield 6 and the multiplayer game mode and all that stuff looks very impressive. So who knows? I mean, Battlefield might be the thing that keeps EA alive or keep people interested in anything that EA is doing. But yeah, but it's going to be interesting to see what the company looks like after it officially goes private in 2027.